Good morning. It is 11:44 a.m. on Sunday, January 7th, 2018. I'm Christiana Ellis and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. I almost missed it being good morning. I definitely slept in today. So, yeah. So as an update from yesterday, before I get into the Ghost in the Shell rewatch, is that I actually did manage to get a few things taken over to the thrift store, and dropping it off was easy enough that I am a little bit kicking myself. See, for some reason, I assumed I was going to have to go through all the stuff with the people and debate whether this or that was good enough to be donated versus having to be thrown away. But apparently they just do that themselves, and that's probably really better. Anyway, today is Sunday, so I am continuing my rewatch of Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex with episode... Which episode is this? Number 9. The title is The Man Who Dwells in the Shadows of the Net. Chat, chat, chat. And this episode is unusual in the sense that, first of all, it is a complex episode, meaning it focuses on the Laughing Man case. But it's kind of a recap episode, but kind of not. It's narratively, it's doing a couple of things that neither of them are really moving the plot forward, but it is simultaneously helping us to remember what the details of the Laughing Man case are, the various ins and outs of the conspiracy theories around it, and to just basically recapping what the case is for us. But it also plays a very important role with this particular case, just in showing us how many people, just civilians, are interested in the Laughing Man case and their various speculations and the way they communicate about it online. Now, I mean, this show originally came out in 2002 in Japan, so it predates things like Twitter, but certainly not chat rooms. And so what we have is sort of an elaborate VR version of a chat room where people are having a discussion about the Laughing Man case. And what happens in the sort of cold open is that we just introduce that that's what's happening, but then an avatar version of the Major materializes in and basically just says, "So, I've heard this is a place where you can find out more about the Laughing Man." And we have the moderator, who is a little enigmatic throughout because he's just got kind of a knowing smirk on his face all the way through, and then towards the end we wonder if there's more to it. But it's the ending, as is typical with many Ghost in the Shell episodes, is left a little bit ambiguous. But we don't necessarily need to go through all the details of the case, because that's kind of just what the episode is doing. But what I like about it is that element of showing us what it is about the Laughing Man case that has captured people's attention, to show that there's a lot of misinformation out there. You know, people pretending to know more than they really know, people who maybe do actually know more than they're saying, and all of that sort of thing. So basically, it becomes clear over the course of the episode that there's this one guy, the little heavier set guy who looks a little nervous and a little bit down. It becomes clear that he's probably why the Major is there. He gradually, first of all, his demeanor is very different from everyone else, but also as he seems to know more. And eventually it's revealed that he had managed to hack into the security cameras and of the crime scene to watch it happen live from alternate angles. And as a result, he was also sort of present electronically when the Major tried to dive into the security guard whose brain had been taken over. And as a result, there's a lot of jargon here, but so from a case standpoint, in theory, what we get is she gets a little bit more information about the dummy barrier that got destroyed. So, if you recall, when the assassination happens, there was the one security guy who was actually taken over by the virus, as opposed to all of the other individuals who decided to join in of their own accord. When the major tried to scan that security guy's brain, there was a defense barrier that would have hurt her, hurt her cyber brain if she hadn't gone through sort of a protective, what she called a dummy barrier. But because that dummy barrier got destroyed, she wasn't really able to record any of what she saw there. This guy apparently managed to get sort of a view of it from another angle, so she's got some data as a result, I guess. But so the conversation over the course of the episode focuses on a couple of different things. One is how the original event, as far as anybody knows, which is the kidnapping and threatening of this Serrano Genomics CEO on live TV, and this is the incident where the Laughing Man has, despite it being an apparently very sort of chaotic, impulsive thing to do, to just march someone into a crowd at gunpoint, demand that they tell the truth, which doesn't actually even occur. It's not effective. They end up having to run. And yet, as impulsive as that seems, he somehow managed to hack every single thing associated with it so that nobody can find out who he is. There's a little bit of discussion about, the idea of, we don't even really know if it's a man, because the body is a man, but it could be a prosthetic body. In any event, a lot of people kind of go back and forth on the passion of the event seems cool, and that's part of what some people like about, the idea that he is taking on this corporate corruption and is being a vigilante about it, and he's very passionate about this cause, appeals to some of them. Some of them are more impressed by just the hacking skills involved, but they all agree that it's a little bit strange that not only does the thoroughness of the hacking kind of conflict with how impulsive the rest of it seems to be. They actually talk like his hands are shaking. But also that the behavior of that event seems very different from the corporate blackmail which follows. And they actually talk a little bit about how some of the corporate blackmail, there's conspiracy theories that what if they were actually just faking it in order to manipulate their own stock prices? Because each of these companies received, bailout money, but their stocks went way, way down in the meantime. So we have essentially something a little bit like the economic housing collapse here in the U.S., where each of these companies gets blackmailed, their stock goes way down, and anyone who sold those stocks short would make a killing. And then once the government comes in and bails out the company, the stocks go back up to normal. So, and then they note also that there seems to be one company that didn't actually, the stock manipulation doesn't actually seem to match the pattern of the others. And so there's a lot of just discussion about is the Laughing Man one person? Is it a group? And also this latest resurfacing that's got everybody talking about it again, does that actually have anything to do with the original events? Because of course we have this virus now created, and he sort of was trying to pose as the Laughing Man, But what we have is essentially a series of events. We have the original hostage taking on live TV. We have several instances of corporate blackmail that seem similar, but could be some of them copycat events. We have the original threat of the police commissioner after the Interceptor case, and then we have the actual assassination attempts. And the assassination attempts fall into the two pieces. There's the one, the hacked security guard, and then all of the other copycats. And so they're basically talking through all of these things and trying to say, does it actually make sense that there's some consistent entity responsible for all of that, or how many of those might be parallel activities or inspired by or copycat activities? And so, other than just kind of recapping all of those details, that's kind of where we leave it in this episode. But we get some nice imagery, like the idea that someone hacked one company's robots to place all the office desks on the roof in the shape of the Laughing Man thing. But then, of course, we finish the episode with the Major first kind of hijacking the one guy who seems to know more and getting the information that he has. But then, after she lets him go and he drops out of the chat room, the Major says something kind of in line with what we've been talking about with this episode, or this case so far. This idea that this strange idea that such an iconic inciting event, this hostage taking, followed by the complete disappearance of this character of the Laughing Man, inspired clearly a number of copycat events that have occurred as a result of what they think the original thing is. But for example, let's say hypothetically, if the Laughing Man did the original kidnapping and that was all, and then someone else stole that identity to do the corporate blackmail, if then people are inspired by the idea of the character of a person that would do both things, they are essentially the copycat of something that never existed, because they have synthesized a character of the Laughing Man based on these two things, and they're copycatting that. I don't know. It's interesting. We're going to obviously follow up on all of these things as the Laughing Man story continues over the course of the season. But next week, we will be talking about another standalone episode called A Perfect Day for a Jungle Cruise, which, if I recall correctly, is a Bato-focused episode. So I'll talk to you tomorrow for 5 more minutes.